morning, everyone. My name's Jennifer Hutchins. I'm the executive director of the Maine Association of Nonprofits, and we do MANP Connects few times a year, Friday mornings. It's something we started in 2020 when people were spending a lot of time online and in their offices. And we wanted a way to connect with other nonprofits across the state, and it's turned out to be a really fabulous way for us to share topics that are coming up in the nonprofit community, and also just give all of you an opportunity to have a sort of a brief but meaningful connection with all the people who are working in and volunteering for and supporting our really robust and amazing nonprofit community here in Maine. And today is no exception. I'm really delighted. Today, we're kind of considering this our summer pop-up. I've asked Andrew Butcher, he's the president of the Maine Connectivity Authority, to come and talk to us today about a project that they're very, very important. I mean, it's more of an initiative. He'll get into it, but they're in the process of doing a really important project. And I have to admit, this is full transparency. Andrew and his team reached out to me just a few weeks ago and said, Jen, we'd like to tell you a little bit about the project we're doing. And it is a little embarrassing, but I was like, why? Why are you reaching out to me? I happen to have met Andrew several years ago, and I know he does amazing work, and I know that he has been managing hundreds of millions of dollars in expanding broadband in the state of Maine. But I had completely put that in a silo in my head, right, of being about economic development, entrepreneurship, that kind of thing. And anyway, suffice to say, he's going to tell us today why nonprofits absolutely are part of the infrastructure and the community that relies on broadband and all the opportunities that come along with it. So I made the connections really quickly. And so I'm just really grateful to Andrew and his team for reaching out and frankly, like, inviting us to the table. Like part of it, and I can see Tom right now, so I'm going to assume he's going to nod. Part of it was just like I was shocked somebody wanted us to come to the table because so many times there are these big statewide conversations happening all over about community issues. And it's like, oh, wait, right, nonprofits. Well, we're going to decide what we want to do, and then they'll probably end up having to do a good portion of it, right? So I'm just really grateful for Andrew taking the time to reach out with his team in advance. So enough of me teeing us up. Good morning, Andrew. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. I'm especially
Oh,
glad to
good.
be here. And can
Oh,
you hear me
great.
okay?
Yeah, you're
Oh,
great.
great.
Yeah. And I just want to say, it was, you got to admit, the Maine Connectivity Authority, you must have been thinking of Map Connects, right? And you just wanted to steal the brand a little bit.
With connectivity.
Yeah, because
And
because this show is so popular,
this
Andrew.
has been perhaps the longest play ever, to just be able to get a slot on
Yeah.
MAMP Connects.
I know.
We set
I
up a new
know.
agency.
Yeah.
We've been branding around it for years to get here. So this
Yeah.
is a dream come true.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's an honor to finally be able to get you on the show. I have to say your agents really like tough deal. Tough deal.
Well,
How's the salmon? How's the breakfast roll? Is it okay?
I mean, can't the green room treatment here has been
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, good. Good,
I
good.
got out of getting kids to camp this morning. I
Uh,
haven't been bombarded by the morning cat barrage yet.
yeah, right. Yeah.
These are the perks of the remote presentation. But Jen, I will say, you kind of mentioned it, but when I moved to Maine about 9 years ago, and in the spirit of MAMP connects and connectivity in general. When there were three people who I reached out to completely cold when I moved to Maine, and you were one of them. You were at least one of the three that responded. Um, Talk about the power of human relationships and connecting people to resources and local landscape. And I think it's a role that you serve so critically in our community at large. So appreciate the ability to be here and all that you do and your team.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew. Part of in my previous role at Creative Portland, Economic Development Arts Group, you know, I really, and I still carry this with me now, is I feel really strongly about welcoming all kinds of people who can contribute to Maine communities and bring their talents and passions to our state, and anything I can do to help make that happen, I'm happy to do. So thanks for the kind words. But let's launch in. The folks who've signed up for today, they want to know about Maine Connectivity Authority. So
Um,
yeah,
well,
what is
and
it and why should nonprofits care?
Yeah, well, and very kindly, I will say thank you all for joining us today. I think we can all appreciate that a nice a nice Friday in August is a special time to be joining a webinar. Thank you all for joining. I see many names that I recognize, and especially great to have you. We have a number of impressive digital inclusion and connectivity gurus and mavens here as well. So I'll try to call you out. For those that don't know about the Connectivity Authority or MCA, I'm just going to give really quick context on it. In part because we are a still a pretty new-ish quasi-governmental agency, started in 2021 with bipartisan legislation, and really operational in 2022. I was fortunate to be the first hire. I was hired by the board, nominated by the governor, hired by the board, approved by the legislature. Day one, my job was to develop an RFP to open a bank account so that the organization could pay employees. So for anyone who's ever been in a startup environment, you know the situation. But as a quasi-governmental agency, we also had to build out all of the functions of the organization and be ready to address a very critical need, right? 2022 on the tail end of the pandemic. Be able to embrace our mission of being proactive in addressing universal, affordable, high-speed internet prepared for the future. Within 6 months from startup, we were in position to deploy um, hundreds of millions of dollars of federal recovery, relief, and infrastructure investment, while also administering active state grants and planning activities. So it's been an incredible journey, and I'm just pleased to say that over the last couple of years, we've deployed and managed about 300 million in state and federal funding, have facilitated connectivity to about 130,000 unserved locations around the state. We've invested about 30 million in investing in digital equity and inclusion for the places, people, and projects that ensure Mainers are able to navigate, contribute, and thrive in our digital environment. And I'm going to talk more about sort of the balance between supply and demand and the role of nonprofits in that. But I'll just say that the function of digital inclusion is critical to the success of, I think, the sustainability of investments being made. It's recognizing that connectivity requires a balance of supply, demand, call, and response. The end of the day, networks work best when there are more participants using the network and engaged in the network, which is in many ways why MAMP as a hub of a network of organizations and a sector is so critical. and why, after all of the progress that we've made in the last couple of years, and by we, it's really a broad we because MCA is just a part of the equation. We work with internet service providers and communities and nonprofits to advance the work. But after all of the progress, there's still a lot of work to do, and so we are amidst, a planning phase. We call it Connectivity 2030, really looking at defining a vision for connectivity moving forward in the context of the work already done and the work in motion. So I'll pause there, and happy to drill into any portion of that, or go where you think makes the most sense, Jen.
Yeah, well, I guess I'd be really curious to see if we can get a get a bit a little bit more of a picture of when you think about where you are at now. Um, where would you like to see, how are your goals evolving since you've obviously accomplished quite a bit? Where are you now in terms of what are the challenges? Is it just about broadband access? Are there other, can you get a little bit more tangible with regards to what the state needs and what you're hoping to accomplish?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, by the way, one of the reasons I'm so excited about this conversation is that there are very few humans that really want to endure the complexity of talking about broadband. It typically is snooze fest. And it tends to be an issue that's sort of a set it and forget it, right? Like, does it work? Does it not? And certainly, I think the pandemic revealed just how significant an issue it is, especially for those that don't have it, right? And so, again, just to sort of keep in perspective some of the macro context here, there are about 632,000 locations that are eligible to receive public subsidy for broadband in the state. Um, we are now at a point, those are the 632,000 locations in the state. If they don't have good enough internet service, they've been eligible for public subsidy. We effectively are winnowing that has been winnowed down to zero as far as the locations that don't have access to or funding for expanding high-speed internet. This is a huge moment of progress for Maine and all rural communities around the country in bridging the digital divide. And just because you have service doesn't necessarily mean you can afford it or you know how to use it. So the way we sort of collectively think about it, right? Three key planks of a connectivity and digital inclusion strategy are access, affordability, and adoption. Access is a huge challenge because we have a lot of space and not a lot of humans. And how do we get the right combination of technologies to provide access? But then shipping into the sort of structural, economic, and social challenges of affordability and adoption is an ongoing journey. Almost 90% of the state qualifies as being disproportionately affected by the digital divide. So we have a lot of work to raise the floor, right? This is people who didn't grow up digital natives, aren't fluent with technology, live in rural areas, have other structural barriers, new Americans, veterans, incarcerated people, unhoused, et cetera. So vulnerable populations are disproportionately affected by digital divide. And this is really important because effectively connectivity and broadband is a community development issue where there are organized networks of communities that are equipped and informed around how to address these barriers. They have the ability to drive demand, whether it is establishing a public-private partnership with an internet service provider, or combining resources to be able to address comprehensive and adaptive technical assistance for their communities in using new technologies. So that's at a high level. I want to answer your question more specifically, right? So what we are doing now is we've been spending the last couple months in a deep engagement process through Connectivity 2030 as a planning process, and happy to talk more about what that's entailed. a couple things that have really bubbled to the top that I think inform what we are doing now. So, while the limit to access is getting smaller and smaller, what we're hearing continues to be issues of, can I make a cell phone call wherever I need? Can I get emergency management services? Can I participate in Maine's, outdoor treasures and still be sufficiently connected for my apps and my phone? Um, Cost of services and devices continues to be a challenge. We are at a moment of massive technology change, and so there's a lot of fear and uncertainty and unfamiliarity with AI at all levels, artificial intelligence. And really top of the list is continues to be that of internet safety and cyber scams, especially for those that are not digital natives. So predominantly older people and people who have not spent significant amount of time participating in a digital economic environment. So those are some of the big challenges that we see right now. And there's lots of, I think, really nerdy stuff to talk about as far as like when you look at how our connectivity infrastructure works and the network of utility poles and wires and the evolving nature of technology, it's a tremendous three-dimensional puzzle. And those continue to be challenges that we as an agency are charged with navigating.
So can you talk for just a minute more about the work that you're doing over the summer and why we decided to do this pop-up now? I would love to make sure that the folks on the call know how they can participate in that. Let's talk about that. And then I'd really love to hear a couple of examples of how you're working directly with, say, a community or something. But first,
Yeah.
let's hear about how people can get involved in your information gathering this summer.
So we actually have just closed a couple things. So we have closed a public survey that we promote, and thank you all for your assistance. I think actually several of the attendees here, I recognize names of having taken the survey.
Oh, great.
A public survey that involved a combination of both digital survey and place-based outreach. Thank you very much, Molly, for your link to the Connectivity 2030 initiative there. That's being one key part of it. The other thing is that, we've tried hard to embrace a core community development principle of go to people and networks where they are at. So, how fortunate to have a MANP Connects ongoing webinar series. This represents a great opportunity to hear from attendees and to, start a conversation. Um, we also have learned that, going to places physically really matters. And while broadband may be a snooze fest, people really care about the issue. Whether they call it broadband or connectivity or digital inclusion, people really care and come together around the things that they care about. So one way we've tried to do that is I have just finished, I just calculated it last night, over 900 miles of traveling around the state in the last month in my 1984 Westphalia van, dubbed Buttercup. Buttercup is an incredible mechanism of connectivity. Fred Corey, who is here with the Micmac Nation in Aroostook County, joined me last year in this Driving Connections tour because people across the spectrum tend to really appreciate Buttercup. It makes people smile. People of different backgrounds come together in different ways. And it's a wonderful way of starting a conversation around what it is that connects us. So that 900 miles entailed about 120 different conversations around the state with a variety of partners who we already work with, partners and practitioners who are generating important insights, as well as other groups and stakeholders that are key to helping us test hypotheses around how we can help facilitate more collaboration between networks. Because I think one important fact to highlight is that MCA manages a number of different federal and state funding streams. Um, in the bipartisan infrastructure law, there was a key focus around digital equity and inclusion, recognizing that you have to support people who are going to be using the technology and services that are expanding with infrastructure. That it's a harmonious relationship. And so there was 2.6 billion dollars nationally for digital equity. Um, that program was terminated by the Trump administration. The direct impact to Maine, as many of folks know here, but I'll just voice over. Maine secured about 35 million in federal investments through the Digital Equity Act, 25 million in competitive grants secured because of the very healthy ecosystem in Maine that has recognized the importance of digital equity and inclusion, and 10 million through the state as a capacity building program to provide support to the network of nonprofits and organizations. It was a really tough hit a little over a year ago. And so over the course of the last year, we've continued to try to salvage. Maine was the first state in the country to develop a digital equity plan, and again, due to that very strong network. And so what we have been trying to do through this engagement process is understand what are the opportunities for increased collaboration? How do we continue to aggregate funding and resources to be able to address the needs? Because at the end of the day, and this is not news for anybody who's participating in this, we have to figure out how to do more with less. And so I'm happy to talk about a couple ways in which that's taking shape already. The Connectivity 2030 process we're looking forward to hosting a digital opportunity workshop on October 2nd. And I'm happy to forward a save the date link after the webinar. And then we are also looking to put forward this updated strategic plan for connectivity and share that on December 9th at a statewide connectivity summit. That serves as our roadmap for the next couple of years. It serves as a roadmap for an incoming gubernatorial administration. It serves as a roadmap for an incoming legislature, and frankly, also serves as a roadmap for us as an ecosystem and what we are prioritizing and how we can leverage the existing assets that we have right now. I'm happy to talk more about that, but you can only listen to me blabber for so long.
Well, you're doing a good job. I haven't started snoozing yet, so
Oh,
you still
thanks.
have me. I'm just curious, and again, I know there are a lot of people on this call who I'm sure will definitely know a lot more about this. So pardon me for being the neophyte in the room, but can you give an example of like how does it work for, is MCA tending to work with regions or communities? Meaning towns, municipalities, or how do you go about digging in? Like I'm just thinking, so my husband and I go every summer up to Stonington on Deer Isle, right? And there's always this issue of like, are we going to be able to, where do we stand in the cottage to get the connectivity, to be able to make a phone call or whatever? Like when it comes, do you work with towns like the town of Stonington? Who are the partners and how would somebody in rural Maine understand how the work you're doing is going to change their life or already has?
Mm. Yeah, there are a couple ways of thinking about that. And like many things, it kind of depends on what problem we're solving for.
Hmm.
Um, and so, what I'll say is that, when we're talking about, let's just sort of put it under the access umbrella. When we're talking about a lot of the funding, investment, and activity has been around building out the infrastructure for access, right? Like the poles, the wires, and in some cases, some of the wireless technologies to be able to provide improved access to your home or business. Um, a lot of that is a direct sort of grant making that MCA makes to internet service providers. So I know in Stonington, your internet service provider is likely Fidium, who actually received a federal grant in 2022 to be able to expand high-speed internet throughout the Blue Hill Peninsula and Deer Isle. Um,
Okay.
they received that competitive award because they engaged with the town and with regional planning organizations and with communities and community groups to understand the level of involvement and investment and priorities within that community.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, it's a lot of, like forcing a internet service provider to really act as and invest the staff time in listening to communities and incentivizing that with the public funds. And so that's a good example of that
Hmm.
access approach and the problem around access. But that's of course just one of them.
Right.
Another one is like, well, great, you have internet access at your home or your cottage in Stonington, and that is key to be able to live where you love, and to live and work and participate in telehealth and remote school. Um, but communities need to also be in communal places, and so how we think about places and the community anchor institutions in those places is really key. So the town of Stonington was a recipient of an MCA grant called a Connectivity Hub, so that they could upgrade a town facility with the ability to host telehealth sessions, to be able to provide remote work and public Wi-Fi, and to be able to provide necessary level of technical assistance for people who want to use those services. So I'm very glad that we've been able to prioritize a smaller amount of funding for about actually now it's about 10 different connectivity hubs throughout the state, with a recent set of awards to Maine State libraries and their area resource centers to be able to further augment and support how libraries are utilizing their spaces, which have already done incredible work in adapting and incorporating digital services into their offerings. But librarians are tasked with being digital navigators and supporters for constituents. So connectivity hubs are a key way of addressing those needs. So how we've done it, we've invested, of course, in the access partnerships. We've continued to invest in connectivity hubs and community anchor institutions as key places of delivery. And how we continue to do it, we've also, I have a background in nonprofits. Um, Organizations need capacity to do the work. It is a lot of work to develop authentic relationships, listen, and attend to it. We've tried very hard to invest in the capacity of about 16 different regional and tribal organizations around the state, and provided 3 years of capacity for their targeted digital equity and connectivity capacity. That is of course a harder area to secure funding for, and as funding has been terminated and dwindled, that continues to be a difficult challenge, but has been a key to a very healthy ecosystem. um, and a couple other quick things I'll say, just and we'll talk more about them if you want. Access to devices is a key challenge, so we've tried to partner with one of Maine's true digital equity luminaries and Give IT Get IT, and they provide both technical assistance and guidance for communities and individuals in using IT and technology, while also refurbishing and making available lower cost, high quality devices through a program. We've partnered with them through a program called Maine Tech Share, and I'm happy to put a link in the chat around that. Lastly, helping people navigate and get access to the range of resources is really key. And so we've also put forward a partnership and a program called Tech Help for Me, which provides really a map and a set of resources for, all right, you don't have a connectivity hub in your neighborhood or in your town. Where can you go for access to telehealth services? Who can you talk to for support around digital navigation? And so Tech Help for Me serves as somewhat of a clearinghouse for these resources. So I'll pause there. There's a couple other things on the horizon which are timely to talk about, but I'll pause there for now.
Okay. Yeah, we have about 10 minutes before we would start wrapping up. I will say that if there's somebody who has a question, in about 5 minutes, I'll open it up to see if anybody wants to ask Andrew a question. But I think with the time we have left, Andrew, I do want to I think making sure that folks understand all the resources that you have access to, or that I get it, that you're not the only ones offering resources, but I am getting the impression you want to see yourselves as a place that people can come to find out about all the different resources. So I'm curious about actually, I think you guys have sort of, isn't there a back to school session that you have? And so just going through those community resources, and then included in that, are there still grants that are open if people want to find out about how to tap into any kind of grant funding to support their community? Are those still available? So direct trainings and resources as well as grant funding opportunities. I think that's where we want to go now.
Yep, great. Um, there is a upcoming direct training. I actually don't have it in my queue, but there is a, back to school
That's okay, we
device.
do.
Oh, great. Back to school device donation program. Again, Maine Tech Share represents, we've learned a lot around the role of public-private partnerships and public-public partnerships. And as we all know, partnerships are both necessary, critical. They allow us to do things at a higher order in an innovative way. They also require a lot of work and a lot of time. And so glad for the partnership with Give IT, Get IT. We're really trying hard to recognize both at a public agency and at a private institutional, there's a lot of equipment and devices that gets, we are increasingly dependent on our devices, our equipment, um, how we manage that and how we make that available as it gets cycled, and prioritizing the opportunity to make sure that people without devices or with limitations to devices are able to get it. So the back to school webinar will be a great opportunity, in particular for private institutions, and to understand the program and to know how to participate. Um, I will also say, as I mentioned earlier, what we have known since what we've known probably forever and most acutely since the development of a digital equity plan in 2024, there is not enough resources to be able to provide the support for the people and the places that are impacted by a digital divide. There's just not enough money. Even with the federal grants, there was not enough money. Um, and so MCA, MCA is a standalone entity. We are of the state, but we were set up to be truly independent of the state apparatus. And so we have a team in place that is, responsible for administering and accounting and attending to all of the 140 grants under administration right now. We also have team members that are, in place to serve as technical resources and guides for accessing the network that already exists. And so that team has worked under our digital opportunity program to create a digital opportunity fund so that we can concentrate whatever resources available to address the priorities that we are hearing as quickly as possible. Many of the folks on the call and anyone who has participated in a federal grant knows that it is, you have to be careful what you ask for, and is as much a burden as it is a gift. And so we tried hard to hear that, we're talking about addressing needs of vulnerable populations. Asking them to attend to the requirements of a federal grant can be challenging. So we've tried hard to right size a grant program to address a key priority of internet safety, and have launched the Digital Resilience Grant Program yesterday. And it's in essence a pilot program to see the right scale and timeline for these activities. About 250,000 is available for awards up to 50,000. We are trying to minimize the administrative burden, and we're trying to cultivate the ongoing shared learning and community of practice so that we can continue to augment tech help for me, and we can continue to work with partners to aggregate more capital. That means partnerships with financial institutions, community development organizations, philanthropies. And so we will continue to try to aggregate funding through the Digital Opportunity Fund as a way of strengthening this network. And so the Digital Resilience Program is sort of the first one that MCA has capitalized. So applications were live yesterday, or the portal was live yesterday. Applications closed September 10th.
Yeah.
I'll just voice over two other quick opportunities. One, recently a court ordered the Trump administration to reopen the Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program with a couple unfortunate modifications around eligible populations. But in essence, the primary purpose of the program has been preserved, and NTIA, the National Telecommunications Information Administration, um, has indicated they will be reopening that program in December. And so previously funded projects are not necessarily going to be refunded, but it does open up an important opportunity to look at creative partnerships and address the need. Um, and then just lastly, the grateful for the ongoing work at Grow Smart and a network of organizations that Sunrise County Economic Council, which continue to sort of be key contributors to the Maine Broadband Coalition, which is a network of organizations and companies who continue to advance policy and priorities. And I would encourage folks to reach out to me and the MCA team, the Broadband Coalition, um, where there are policy needs to address or pragmatic issues. Like, we want to be a partner, and I think the if folks are not participating in a policy sphere, I really encourage you to do so.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andrew. That's exactly that's a great place for us to pause for a second. I will say, if anybody, I can take one question if there's a burning question. What would be helpful to me is if you could use the raise your hand feature, because then it puts you right up to the at the bottom of your screen so that it can pop up and I see it. If there aren't any questions, that's fine. We've gotten so much information today. And but your point, Andrew, is exactly that you're closing on is exactly what I was inspired to do at MANP. We're trying to show that nonprofits are key partners in with business and government to make our communities better. And sometimes I feel like nonprofits are, again, as I said at the beginning of this, left out of the conversation at the start, or may just not understand. Sometimes it's kind of a very confusing to find out like where the grant opportunities are and just the communication around understanding how all of this connects. And so I appreciate your urging of people to reach out to the Maine Community Connectivity Authority and stay in touch and learn more about all the work that you guys are doing. So thank you so much. Um, I haven't seen anyone raise their hand, which is totally fine. Is there anything you want to close with that you were hoping to cover today, Andrew, that we should share?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I too, please cut me off if somebody drops a question in, and but I think just to double click on that last point here, and I'll be quick about it, but I do think that I just want to reiterate the fundamental point of, organized communities drive demand, and I'm not talking about just place-based communities. Um, Last year we saw an incredible turnout of organizations through a Digital Opportunity Networks grant program. This was one of the ones that was terminated. And it was, I think, so important to show up and see not just, libraries and schools, but networks that work with incarcerated populations and new Americans. The organized communities drive demand in informing how resources flow. It's a lot of resources flow certainly through the federal government, but through state government. And I think my charge to the nonprofit partners and sector at large and sort of invitation for partnership is connectivity and digital inclusion is not a siloed technology issue, right? Like no one wants to really talk about upload and download speeds and feels confusing, but it's not a just silo technology issue. It is central increasingly to all issues and all populations. So my charge is, include it as a plank in your strategies. Identify it as a flavor in your menu of partnerships. The connectivity hub in Somerset County has really modeled a beautiful partnership of adult education, senior assistance, workforce development, veterans engagement, and workforce development. So it's a diverse array of partnerships. And I charge folks for identifying it as an outcome to measure, and something that is an opportunity to both cultivate resources around and generate increased impact around. So I'll pause there, but again, very happy to continue conversations and look forward to continuing the partnership with many of the folks that are here. So again, really appreciate the time and good conversation.
Great. Well, I do want to, Sarah has just put in a question, so let's see if we can answer this one quickly. We have a partnership with Portland Public Library and a nonprofit who is providing discounted devices. Are these grant opportunities available for nonprofits who need support with staff overhead costs for digital literacy programming? And you got
Yes.
into that a little bit about the staff capacity needs of expanding these access and resources.
Yes. And without knowing more about the partnership off the top of my head, I will say we tried to create the digital resilience program to offer flexible support, capacity being a key part of that. And so, I think the more we hear of that demand, the more we work with state partners and philanthropic partners to make those resources available. And so, historically, that's been a key part of what we've tried to prioritize. And as funding has gotten tighter, we're continuing to try to bake it into even smaller and more adaptable grant programs.
Great. Thank you. And Sarah just gave us a thumbs up. So good job.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, everybody. Thank you again, Andrew, for taking time out of your summer. Really appreciate it. Great conversation, great information. You and your team are doing excellent work. I encourage people to learn more about what MCA is doing. And I'm just so excited to have tapped into yet another really tangible example of how nonprofits are making Maine communities more resilient and just more thriving places to live and work. I've always known that, but it's always great to hear more examples. So thank you so much. Hey everyone, as I wrap up, I just want to mention I do thank our MANP Connect sponsor, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. They're awesome. And we have it's schools opening back to reality, everybody. You have a little bit left of summer, but then we got to get right back to work. We have just so you know, we have an in-person nonprofit community meetup on September 10th here in Portland. It's a special edition. So please join us. We'll put a link in. Our next MAMP Connects is going to be about advocacy is mission work. We're coming upon election season. I don't know if anybody knew that, but we have some important elections coming up. That's a joke. I'm sure you've heard about that. Then we'll also have a nonprofit advocacy 101, sort of the how nonprofits can do advocacy, because you can do advocacy, and we're going to tell you how you can do it legally. And that's on September 23rd. And then we're doing our big nonprofit in-person convening in Auburn this year in November, on November 19th, Together for Good. And we hope you join us for that. So lots of ways to stay engaged with MAMP. Thank you again, Andrew. Great to see so many of you today. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and we hope to see you in September at our next MAMP Connects. Take care, everybody.